second. All right, we're live now. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Midweek situation, and we're going to be using the midweek show to highlight instructional design processes with the Canvas learning management system, which is and Webbs, correct me if I'm wrong, still has the highest market share in terms of learning management system in the United States. Well, is it
I'm
the
pretty
world?
sure, yeah.
So yeah, we've got some. Move my camera a little bit, so it's be a little weird. So yeah, Canvas has a set of challenges, I guess, in terms of instructional design that makes it a bit interesting to utilize in classrooms, especially when we're
I don't
talking.
think it's just Canvas. I think in general, like we kind of went into this world of instructional design that's digital and it sort of happened quickly and that's not a thing that we're generally trained on as teachers. Because whether it's Canvas or Schoology or whatever other learning management system you're using, it can be challenging to figure out how to like set up your stuff because we're not experienced designers, we're teachers.
But like Google Classroom, for example, essentially prevents you from designing pages in Google. Like there's no designing a page. It's just adding links. It's super like simplistic. Uh, Canvas goes into a place where it wants you to be able to design pages, but the rudimentary decisions you have on real estate on a page stop you from really utilizing the page, I guess, in the way that perhaps it was intended originally. And so, even if you wanted to aesthetically change a page, to do so is so difficult that it becomes either so time consuming that you stop doing it or you never start in the first place.
Yeah, because it's still just a WYSIWYG. It's a what you see is what you get text editor is really what it comes down to. So it doesn't give you the same flexibility as like designing a slide deck does, where you can just kind of put it wherever you need to put it and it'll stay there. You're committed to designing it in the same way you would like a Google Doc or something where it has to all follow sort of a text page situation.
Without any of the benefits, I guess, of a Google Doc.
Yes, that's absolutely true. I'd
So,
agree with that. Especially with all the advancements they've made in the last like year or so.
and so that's what we're going to talk about today. Like, yo, how might we essentially hack Canvas to make it more tenable, especially if we're talking about elementary school, like after the pandemic happened, when they switched Canvas to the elementary school version, which if you're like our local school district, what happened with the SIS and Webbs, can you explain very quickly what SIS means?
Well, SIS is a student information system. So that tends to be like your Infinite Campus, your Power School, basically anywhere that houses student information. So, like names, addresses, other personally identifiable information or PII. That is the student information system. Then there's LMS, which is a learning management system. So that would be like Canvas, Schoology. Those are all basically there so that you can put your content and curriculum someplace that students can access it.
And the reason why the SIS speaks to the LMS is to do what?
It's mostly just because it's much easier, especially when you're talking about very large districts, to populate information if there is a connection between the student information system and the learning management system. Because otherwise, you have to go in there one at a time and add each student. And beyond a certain size, that's just not practical. So they usually will connect them so that one can populate the other.
Okay, so that brings us to our first point, and really with this series, it's how do we hack Canvas? But in order to hack Canvas, you have to know what Canvas does well and what it does not do very well. And what Webb's kind of explained was what Canvas does well: the rostering of students, That is done for you. All your kids, once they're rostered at the whatever school district level, they're also rostered in Canvas, so you do not have to go find individual emails and place them in your class. Right? Does that super well. The second thing that it does well that we want to exploit is that in theory there is grade passback. If I grade something in Canvas, that grade is then sent to the SIS on the opposite way. So Infinite Campus gets that grade. If it's in the class, that grade is syncs to whatever you gave it, and suddenly I don't have to do that twice. It goes directly where it needs to go. In theory, that we know that sometimes that doesn't work, but in theory, that's how it's supposed to function. So rostering young people and grading their papers, that is the chief benefit of using Canvas, and we don't want to lose those benefits. Go ahead, Webs.
I think there's actually one other thing, and that is your ability to share the courses you create either via Canvas Commons or Common Cartridge. Like you can take a course you've created and export it and give it into a format that someone else can take it and upload it so that they can tweak it and change it. Like we've shared Common Cartridge files before. I think one of my most popular videos on YouTube is how do you upload an IMSCC file, which is a common cartridge file. So I think it's good for that too.
I would agree to an extent. I think where I would disagree would be I don't think lots of teachers, especially those teachers who are not using Canvas, like even the rudiments, are even thinking about that particular functionality. And I think that it would be easier to share a Google Doc, a Google Slide, a Google Site, etc., because those tend to be more in the universe of teachers at this point in time.
Oh yes, comparing those two things, I would totally agree. But like you'd have to share each individual document, and if you want to package them all together and share everything, then I guess you could have like a parent Google Doc that all the links go into or something.
That's why tools like Notebook LM and Google Gemini are going to make this process a lot easier because they are built to package documents from my Google Drive into shared knowledge bases, I guess we could call them at this particular point. Um, but yeah, we'll say three things: being able to share your course with other individuals. But generally, if I'm a single teacher thinking about this very selfishly, it is my kids are rostered, and I don't have to roster my young people myself. And also, if I grade something in Canvas, that grade ends up on their report card without me having to physically move it from the Canvas course to Infinite Campus or whatever SIS that you're utilizing. All right. So we want to make sure that we are essentially, to use gamer parlance, spamming that. Right, we're going to exploit that as much as possible. We do not want to use any strategies that are going to force us to have to roster kids ourselves or to grade outside of Canvas and have to manually add those grades to your Infinite Campus, et cetera, et cetera. Like we want to avoid that at all costs. So those will be the golden rules of every strategy that we give you. They will always utilize the rostering function and will always utilize the grading function. All right. That being the case, Webs, how much Canvas did you use? Did you use Canvas at all when you were in the classroom?
No, we were doing Google Classroom when I was last in the classroom. I
Oh, but
don't think we either didn't have Canvas or hadn't gotten it yet, or maybe it hadn't become popular. But my go-to is usually Google Classroom.
your experience as a learner, you have used you've used Canvas extensively, correct?
Oh gosh, yes. Oh my gosh. I have high opinions of or strong opinions of what it is like to experience Canvas as a learner.
And as a learner, like what would you say the strong suits of Canvas are as a learner first?
Ooh, definitely when you set dates, it sets things on your to-do list. Like I rely on that a lot as a learner. So if you have an assignment and you give it a due date, it'll come up on the learner's to-do list and it has like little and it'll like pace you kind of. So for example, if I have 3 things due on Sunday like I do this week, then it'll show me a little badge that says, hey, here are the items that you have on your to-do list that are due on Sunday. And each week it rolls over. So it's not giving you like absolutely everything. It's just giving you what's due in that upcoming week. And I find that really helpful for keeping me on task.
Mm,
I do like the way, like, if modules are set up correctly, I can kind of click through and
mm,
I can go through the content in the order it's supposed to go through in. Especially if all of those like assignments and pages and everything are added to the module so that I can just keep clicking the arrow to go through the things. I don't like it when things get hidden. So sometimes I've seen professors add assignments, but then those assignments don't end up in a module anywhere and they don't have a due date. So the only way I'll see them is if I go digging in the assignments
mm,
section. But if they hide the assignment section, then I don't even have access to that. So that can be really frustrating. Um, One of the cooler things I've seen is instead of doing discussions,
mm,
we do oh my gosh, what did my one professor call that? Because I had her for a couple classes, and basically she would set up a Google Doc, like a PDF, and she'd share the link, and
mm.
we would do shared shared comments on the document.
Okay.
So like you would highlight a section in the Google Doc and make a comment on it.
Mm,
Social citations, I think she called them. And then we could have little discussions in the comments of the Google Doc, which
mm,
I found much more meaningful, and I was actually like excited to engage in that activity as compared to write an essay, respond to a discussion question, respond to your classmates, because it made it very easy to highlight the section that I wanted to talk about as reference and then just leave like a short social citation. I engaged in that a lot more frequently because the overhead wasn't so much. Like I didn't have to sit there and, compose a whole freaking letter back like it's the 1890s.
mm.
Dearest classmate, I appreciate that you shared blah, blah, blah. Also, I have opinions about building culture when it comes to working asynchronously, but that's like a whole other episode. But yeah, the big things were the to-do list, and I really didn't enjoy the social citations.
Interesting. And I guess so. In kind of thinking about tonight's episode, one of the things you end up going down rabbit holes and hearing what people are saying about things, etc.
You no way.
I mean, it is what it is. But it's very interesting. There's a camp of people out there that don't think you can utilize a learning management system for in-person learning. And I was like, this is very, very interesting to me. Like, it's just super weird to me that can't do both of those things at one time. And so there was a camp of teachers who were really like, I don't use a learning management system because I teach like in person. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Um, well, and that is a conversation because we can go way down that path.
I was gonna say, because so most of my degree has been in-person classes, and all of them have Canvas as a component. That's wild. Even when I was in the classroom, Google Classroom was like, I mean, we met in person every day, but the thing I loved about having their assignments on Google Classroom was it made it accessible. It was universal design for learning so that if students were absent, they still had access to content. It meant that there was no the dog ate my homework scenarios because a lot of the assignments were posted like on Google Classroom and they could make copies of them. It gave transparency to parents. Like there are so many reasons it's helpful to use an LMS even when you're meeting in person every day.
Yeah, I would agree. However, I mean,
I know, preaching to the choir.
there are a number of, and I think there's a number of reasons why
Why
there
do
are
you think that
people.
is?
I think first and foremost, as you said at the top of the show, teachers aren't experienced designers in that particular sense. They're not instructional designers on with online tools. Like when is someone supposed to acquire that ability? So again, not my fault that I went to college before, and then even knowing some recent grads that don't have that skill set. So um, knowing that that is not a skill that is being taught in undergraduate school or grad school or wherever people are going to teacher college, that online you have to be able to design for that particular space. Like the other thing is tools, right? Some tools are very difficult to work with. You said Google Classroom. Well, Google Classroom for our local school district is not an option for teachers to utilize. And so the relative simplicity of a Google Classroom, and then even the simplicity comes with some drawbacks. Like now I get into the scenario in which I'm not actually designing anything. I'm just putting links
You're
and
just posting links.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're like,
exactly.
okay,
I've
well, that,
often said Google Classroom is an LMS designed by developers, where like Canvas is an LMS probably designed by educators, where the educational content might have a lot of like bells and whistles, but as far as the ease of use, UI, UX kind of situation, it's not quite there.
it is painful to be honest, and like it
Yeah.
takes a lot of time, even for somebody. I think I'm relatively good with Canvas. It takes a lot of time to start to play around and get things to move around the way that you would like. Sometimes it doesn't work, which is also very frustrating when it comes down to it. But this is why this series exists, because there are some ways to hack this particular system to make it do what you would like it to do.
I
Go
wonder
ahead.
if part of it too is like the assumption that you have to build everything in Canvas, right? Instead of using Canvas as just a pass through to get the benefits you were talking about, the rostering, the grade pass back, you feel like some obligation, like you have to build all the content in there. And I think we've touched on this years ago that it's actually kind of beneficial to not be super locked into Canvas, because then you have the portability of moving your things around and you don't get locked out of your stuff. When if for some reason like, Canvas rolls over or whatever, I guess that's one kind of drawback is you don't have access to your courses forever. So at some point you have this turnover and you might lose access to your content. Whereas if you're just basically using Canvas as a what we call in development a layer of abstraction, like it's just essentially a pass through, then your content is always available to you. And all you're really doing is putting links or linking out to other places.
Well, to your point, I don't think people tell teachers, hey, you know what? The benefits are here and the downside is here. How do we design for for not only efficacy on your behalf, but also for ease? And again, I think once you explain to or what you demonstrate to teachers, hey, again, the rostering thing is wonderful. That's cool. Keep that. The grade pass back is wonderful. That's cool. Keep that. The middle part, we can negotiate how to get things from one place to another with tools that you're more familiar with. That's not going to take you as long to utilize. And it also is going to be a lot more aesthetically pleasing, I think, for not only for the teacher, but for the learner as well. Hey, this is something that looks attractive rather than trying to make something in Canvas look that way, or embedding
Mhm.
everything into Canvas. And like, if I'm in embedded, I might just link it from the pretty place into Canvas rather than embedding all of this. But we have said a lot. Let's get to like demonstrating some things and whatnot. Um, Again, we're gonna focus on Google Docs just because Google Docs at this point in human history is very familiar to most people in learning environments. Is that a fair statement, Webbs?
Seems like it would be. I mean, Google is a pretty ubiquitous system. Most districts seem to be either Microsoft or Google. So,
And Microsoft Word would function in a similar way. I mean, it wouldn't be what we're going to demonstrate
yeah.
this evening is not going to like be one for one what Microsoft Word looks like, but fundamentally, you could use what Microsoft Word in the same spirit as what we're going to be demonstrating this evening.
Yeah.
All right. And so uh, the things to keep in mind, and I'm going to reiterate this again before we start demonstrating things, is rostering and grade pass back are the things we don't want to lose. Everything else is negotiable. Um, Before we deal with that as well, we Webb's kind of demonstrated, or she mentioned the concept of discussions and things like that. Well, again, everything that's here inside of actually let me just show you. So we're making some assumptions, and I'm going to assume the assumptions I was about to make. First and foremost, Canvas courses are organized into modules. Modules can be of any length you would like, even though they shouldn't be of any length that you like. There should be some consistency in terms of kids being able to visually say, hey, when I go to Miss Jones' class, a module is going to be 3 pages long, and those 3 pages are going to be predictable. It's always going to start with this, and I'm going to do this thing, and then finally this thing's going to happen, and I turn it in. Not one is 18 pages, the next one is 2, the next one is 35, next one's like that drives me batty as someone who looks at people's canvases on a regular basis. Webb, you're going to say something.
Yeah, there's a psychological benefit to that as well, which I will beat this into the ground. Um, Even having a familiar structure reduces cognitive load so that the student isn't focused on, am I doing 3 or am I doing 7? Am I doing 15? Am I doing like how long is this going to be? Keeping them of a similar length, 3, 5, 7, will make it a very predictable pattern so that they can invest less energy in trying to navigate the course, and they can invest more energy in learning the content of the course. Because we talked about this on the last episode. You have the idea behind cognitive load, is, if you haven't heard this before in your teaching classes, the idea is you have a finite amount of like memory space, essentially. Like, think about it like a limited sized whiteboard that you can do work on. And if some of that whiteboard is being taken up by trying to figure out how to navigate the course, that's less whiteboard space that can be used for learning the material. And so it's important there is a benefit, there is a reason behind why it's helpful to have a predictable structure, even in how you structure your courses. I actually experienced this at work recently. So we had a set of meetings, and they were supposed to all be kind of in a similar vein. They were all trying to achieve the same thing, but on different topics. But there were 3 different hosts for the 3 different meetings. And so they all chose to approach the meeting in a different way. There were different tools and a different format. And so it was interesting to see how I felt like there was a certain amount of additional cognitive load, because I was trying to navigate, okay, what format are you asking of me? What tools am I supposed to use? Like, what are you trying to get out of me? And so by the time we got to the third one, we were all kind of frustrated because we were yet again trying to figure out this new format and this new tool we had to use and everything. And it was interesting because like the hosts were like, well, what difference does it make? Really, like, the point is we're getting this information out of you and knowledge sharing and etc. But it does matter. It does matter because when you're thinking about thinking work, thought work, um, to take from my old employer's moniker, when you're thinking about thought work, it matters every bit. You want to conserve every bit of that mental power that you have, so that it can be put toward solving the problem or learning the new material, instead of spending it on what's called extraneous load, all those extra things that aren't really as important.
Absolutely. And so when we build modules in Canvas proper, there are multiple page types we can utilize. And so we have the assignment. Hey, there's something I'm going to do, and I'm going to upload that, whether it's a text file that's I'm going to upload from my Chromebook or computer. I'm going to put a URL up there, that kind of stuff. Quizzes, which are assessments that you build into Canvas, can be great. Sometimes those can be very frustrating. Lots of teachers avoid the quizzes. File, as the instructor, I can upload a file for you to click on and download. Page, as in just a regular page. Discussion, as Webb's kind of mentioned earlier. Text headers, which is just as it implies, just some text that's going to be on the page. External URL, so here's a link from the greater internet that I'm going to embed into a module. So when a kid clicks it, it sends them to that URL. An external tool, and those are generally governed by your institution, what external tools you have access to built into your Canvas. Now, grades. In terms of grade passback, there are 3 page types that can functionally do grade passback. So assignment, and we're going to just create assignment, demo. Click assignment and edit it. If I come into assignment, I can call it what I would like. I can describe the assignment. I can give it the points. I can, again, this is the free version of Canvas. In your institution's page, you can create groups of, hey, this is going to be unit 3, whatever it happens to be. How do you want to display that stuff as points, as complete, incomplete, all that wonderful stuff? How are kids going to submit it? Those are my options. Is it a group assignment? Do you want kids to look at other kids' work? Do you want the kids who look at other kids' work not to see their names? Who do you want to assign that to? When's the due date? It's available from and until. Wonderful. We can do it that way. Great. Let's save this. So that's one way we can have modules. One way we can get grades. The second way we can grade things is to go to quiz, create a quiz. Let's call this actually demo as well. It's going to be in the assignment situation. Let's add it. So you'll notice that when we did the assignment,
Icon.
the icon is still a page. When we look at the quiz, it is a rocket ship for some strange reason. I wonder what the iconology behind that is. Great. Let's edit this. And when we're building this, we can say it's a graded survey, graded quiz, practice quiz, ungraded survey, shuffle the questions, show all this wonderful stuff inside there. All right, great, fine, dandy. I build the questions inside there. Multiple choice type. Also add mastery paths if you're going to be like really, gangster with it. If a kid gets a certain score, it sends them to a different place. These can be very, very nifty. They can also be super confusing. Like when people don't know exactly what they're doing with the mastery pass, it can do all kind of wild and wacky stuff. It is very fun to do with I used to use these with collaborative groups. So I would create a quiz. If you happen to be a leader, that mastery path would send you to a certain module that was different from everyone else's modules. The quiz, I guess, just kind of hijacked. It wasn't for achievement. It was just for self-determination. Leaders went this way. Scribes went this way. Engineers went this way. XYZ persons went the other way. You don't have to do it that way. It's kind of a convoluted way to put people in groups, but there's a lot easier ways to do that. The last way, and Webb's kind of mentioned this, and this is something I utilize for those who have either taken Canvas courses with me before or heard my little rants. All of my pages in my modules that were not assignments were discussions. So you can also grade discussions. And the reason why I always use discussion pages is that I wanted the young people in the class to be able to respond to one another and answer each other's questions, so I didn't have to do it. So if some kid understood something, why are you waiting for Mr. Lane to do it? Especially when all the discussion page is, if I go over here and edit, it's set up exactly like the basic page is set up. So there's no real different functionality there other than to be able to give kids access to be able to speak. And I can grade this. So if you click that graded button, I can go display the points, all that wonderful stuff, add it to assignments, etc., etc. So again, there's 3 pages that can be graded inside of Canvas: assignments, quizzes, and discussions if you wanted to. That's going to be super important because, again, one of the things we're saying about this particular strategy we're going to utilize is we want that grade pass back functionality to be something that we utilize because we don't want to spend all day. We got canines happen, we're good. So, that being the case, again, 3 pages, assignments, quizzes, discussions. So, as we think about what we're going to show you, what we're going to be setting up in the back end is going to be important as well. And so I'm going to delete this. Actually, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go to modules. And I'm going to delete these 3 pages. Now, if you think back to teacher school, they taught us about the BAM model. Webbs, can you expand on BAM?
I have no idea what that is.
Backwards assessment.
Oh, I've never heard it called that. Like, I've heard backward assessment, but never heard it called BAM. Basically, start from the end. Like, start from the end and say, which I gotta say, like, that's a perfect example of sometimes just because somebody knows something one way and the other person doesn't recognize that doesn't necessarily mean that person doesn't know the thing. They could just have a different term for it. But basically, you start from the end and you figure out what is it that you want them to be able to do when you're done, and then you work backward from there. So if I want a student to be able to add single digit numbers at the end, I start from, okay, if I want them to add single digit numbers, what are the steps I need to build to so that they can get to that skill? And that, so when they're ready to assess, they've had an appropriate amount of practice. I've guided them, I've modeled for them. They've been able to do supervised practice. They've been able to practice independently. And so that when they finally do have the assessment of, hey, can they add 2 or single digit numbers, they should be successful because you've given them adequate practice and you've structured it in such a way that it's meaningful. You're not adding a bunch of extraneous extra stuff. Like, if the goal is for them to add single digit numbers, I'm not also just tossing in random story problems or multiplication. Like, I'm really sticking to the path I want them to have is adding single digit numbers.
And so this particular process that we're going to be demonstrating tonight supports the backwards assessment method, because we're going to think about what the assignment, what the assessment is first. We got to teach them how to multiply single digit numbers. What does the actual test look like? Are the kids creating a TikTok channel in which they get a random single digit equation, and they have to demonstrate using that Chromebook, walking themselves through that for an audience of fellow class members who then watch their video and tell them whether or not they did the steps correctly or something like that. I have no idea. Just made that up top of my head.
When you did teacher school, and I'm just generically going to call it teacher school because we all take different paths, but we all at some point kind of go through teacher school, whether it's alternative routes to licensure, or you did undergrad and did it that way, or you did a master's degree, it doesn't matter. But when you did your teacher school, did you ever get a teacher's guide, or were you taught to build lessons from scratch?
Both.
Oh, okay. We never got a teacher's guide. We only ever learned how to start from the standards and build a lesson from the standards.
We got both because when we did our practicums during the summer, we were given curriculum to teach from. However, when I got back to my school in the fall, I didn't have curriculum to teach from. So, uh-oh. Did I lose you? What happened to my monitor? Oh, monitor.
No. Oh, your monitor. You're still displaying, and I can still see you. If you can still hear me.
Blinked out. Yeah, I can hear you, just blinked out. So anyway, yeah, when I got back to Pascagoula, Mississippi, there was not a teacher's guide that was there, and I had to make up things, and I had to look at the diocese said we had to do X, Y, and Z. Great. How do I then take what the diocese expectations are to actual application in the classroom, which I think benefited me at that point. However, it made me overconfident in terms of my own abilities because I had no sounding board so I had no one to tell me, hey, that actually not that good. What you did was kind of crappy. Until I went to Taiwan, and she was like, then when Rachel was like, yeah, dude, you can't teach. Let me demonstrate to you how to do the thing that you think you're doing, but you can't actually do. And so
We from the very beginning, we always started from the standards. Whether it was because so my program was we had to learn how to teach everything. We had to learn how to teach art, PE, music, science, social studies, math, ELA, and all of it we had to learn from you start from the standards, you figure out what your lesson's going to be. We did the Madeline Hunter lesson plan, anticipatory set activity, introduce the objective, model the lesson, guided practice, independent practice, assessment. Like it was like drilled into us. We did have. I do have to say, like I'm very. The more that I talk to people who are from different places, the more that my undergrad teaching preparation program, I can see why it had the reputation it had because it was quite comprehensive and really gave us a solid set of skills to teach just about anything and not just teach it like oh here I'm gonna explain to you this thing but like we were very much encouraged to like be creative and figure out how to make it engaging and we never talked about Schlechte, but like some of the same principles applied, even if they didn't mention him by name. So I was there are still things for my undergrad that like I'm pretty proud of designing those lessons because of how I mean our lesson plans were not sustainable in any way. They were like 12 pages a piece for a 45-minute lesson.
Yeah,
But still like I'm really proud of where my teaching program like of how rigorous it was. And I don't use that in the way that we use that word now.
not rigor mortis.
Rigor.
All
That
right,
just means
so
make it longer.
the
Anyway, back
uh,
to this one.
I bring up the backward assessment method, or BAM as we called it, um, because we will be thinking about the outcome. How is the young person authentically displaying their level of mastery first? And this is super important in terms of how we're going to do this with every method we're going to show you. Because again, the assessment being sent to your SIS is one of the strategies we want to make sure that we spam inside of Canvas. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to build that assessment. So we're just going to call it create an assignment, and we're going to say this is the 90-second documentary. Great. Cool. I've got a module called 90-second documentary. That's what we're going to call the assessment. The kids are going to turn in the 90-second documentary. I'm going to edit this. Oh, not edit that, but edit this. So when we edit it, we would have a brief description. Far more comprehensive than that. We would have thought about how many points everything is. Let's say it's 100 points, not 90 points. Great. Assignments. Let's create a group called Social Studies. So then we're going to put this under the Social Studies group. We're going to display it as points. If we click that, then the kid, this is not going to their final grade. We do want this on their final grade. So our submission, we're going to go and say it's going to be online. They'll put upload a website. We could add media recordings, so perhaps the kids are going to upload media recordings as well, and file uploads. So media recordings would be if the kid wanted to use Canvas to record their deal, they wanted to do that thing, they could do the Canvas Studio for lots of schools or on for young people. They could Canvas Studio if they wanted to. They could also upload a file from their Google Drive or from their computer or from their phone. But also, hey, if I used Adobe Creative Cloud Express or Canva or something like that, and I want that URL, I can plug that URL in there. So add as many as possible. How many attempts do I want the person to have? Limited. Do I want to say you got 3 attempts at this? I could say that if I want to be this the mean person that I generally am not. But unlimited. Put your stuff up there as many times as possible. This is not a group activity, but I want to require that there's a peer review, and I want you to automatically assign it, and I want 2 people to look at every kid's video. All right, cool. If I don't put a date inside that, whatever I use as the due date is going to be where it assigns the reviews. So if I want to push I want you to have it a couple days early because I want your reviewers to be able to, not be stressed out trying to get this stuff accomplished. I could do that right now. Just leave it as the due date. All right. I don't want them to see the names of the people they review because since I'm doing this automatically, it might be your buddy. If you see your buddy's name on it before you see your buddy's face, you might have some kind of bias of some sort where you give your buddy or perhaps you grade your buddy harder than you would somebody that you don't know, which also could happen, I guess. Assign all this stuff or whatever. I'm gonna hit that save and publish button. The reason why we want this particular thing is this. I'm gonna publish this right now as well. Let's publish. When I click on this page, now that it's published, if I go to the top of this page, I get a URL. That URL sends would send any person who is rostered to my class directly to this page. Again, the kid would have to be rostered to my class. If they're not rostered to this class, are they going to be able to see this, Webs? They are not.
They will not.
So there's a level of encryption there that allows you, again, as long as you have that link, the kid being rostered in your class will be able to go directly to where you need to go. Well, why is that a great thing? That means I can put that link anywhere outside of Canvas and still have the benefit of the kid being able to be sent directly to this page to turn their work in. Which
it's not really encryption, it's identity and access management, but
okay, fancy
idea.
Security person. So explain the difference between encryption and whatever you just said.
Encryption means that you're like trying to hide the message or change it somehow. Identity and access management is basically saying like the right people have access to the right tools or resources that they're supposed to have access to. So that would be things like you can't share the link, and then even though I'm not rostered to your class, I can still see the assignment, because the only people that have access to the class are people who are enrolled in the class.
So this is a strategy you can use with any of the tools that you use outside of Canvas. If you can build your assignment inside of Canvas, keep it super simple. Don't put 35 different pages. One assignment, take the link, and we're going to use Google Docs. And we've got these fancy pants templates. If you're really nice, we might send you the links to these templates. I don't know as of yet. If you're really nice, perhaps we'll do that. I'm going to make a copy of this very quickly.
And just for the record, one of the many hats I've worn is security specialist. And while I have not maintained my certification, I was at one point CompTIA Security Plus certified. So I say that from a certain level of technical expertise and not just making things up.
I mean, again, she was very quick to correct me, chat.
Indeed. Sorry. I can't be here and let that slide.
I'm not mad at you. Now, we talked the modules in Canvas. Because of what Google has done with Google Docs, we can build modules in Google Docs now. So you'll notice over here the document tabs will function exactly like a module will function. An introduction. And I'm going to introduce the world, and for those who don't know, to the Tom Selleck method. When I design in Canvas, it is always with Tom Selleck in mind. Now, for people of a certain generation and people who had grandparents of a certain generation, a television program used to come on, I believe it's CBS, with the it has to be one of the top 10 opening theme songs in the history of television shows. It has to be. It's a song that the theme song bumps. So Tom Selleck plays a private investigator called Thomas Magnum, PI. Ran for 8 seasons. I believe it's CBS. If it's not CBS, don't shoot me, please. But
It was definitely CBS.
so 8 seasons. Very high, highly rated show. Again, the theme song was really cool. Took place in Hawaii. He lived in the back of this mansion. It was like really slick. Now, I call it the Tom Selleck method because if you think about the firearm that's associated with his last name, which is the pun of his last name is Magnum, it's 357 Magnum. So when I design Canvas modules, they're either going to be 3 pages, 5 pages, or 7 pages. And it's all based on what I want the young person to do inside of the module. If it is a one-off, I expect this to be done in 50 minutes, and that's the end of our discussion. It's a one-off situation. It is simply 3 pages. It's an introduction. She's going to have all the goodies, like why this is relevant, the learning targets, how you're going to be successful, what you're going to do, really simply there in the very first page. Then it's going to have a task. Yo, this is what you're going to do. We're going to do this thing, and it's going to be laid out so simply that a kindergarten friend can do it. And then at the end, there's going to be this summary that says, yo, you were able to successfully do this thing. Let me review the thing you were asked to do, whatever, and also a link for turn your paper in at this particular link. So in theory, that's where that would go. And I would highlight that just so that it is. Actually, let's make that pretty. Turn in your assignment. I would make that pretty. They would have you reviewed these skills. You were able to do these things. Now turn in your assignment. Click whatever. They would click that, turn in your assignment. That would go where it needs to go. And it goes directly, voila, because I am logged into my Clever account, which logs me into my Canvas account. Once I click that link, I go directly to this page. If I click that link and I'm not logged into Canvas, if I'm logged into Clever, it is going to prompt me to log into Canvas. Yo, your Canvas account is not logged in. You'll click the little Clever button and it'll log them in. If you're a student who is using Clever, or what's the other, ClassLink, or any of the other single sign-on tools, I'm assuming they're individuals that use Google single sign-on to get into Canvas as well. It would prompt you to do so, and if you're actually rostered for this class, it's going to send you directly where you need to go. You would click that button. Your teacher would have added a rubric. Click that button, and we're good to go. And again, I've benefited from. I have my Google Doc, which I am probably a lot easier. It's a lot easier for me to design in. I still benefit from the rostering situation, and I still benefit from the fact that this young person is going to have access to the assignment, which is going to give me access to be able to grade their assignment in Canvas, which saves me the step of having to grade it in Google Docs. So in the grand scheme of things, have I used Canvas? Absolutely, positively. The young person's work is going to be in Canvas, and it's going to then be graded. Have I also used a tool that I am going to be a lot more familiar with in the grand scheme of things? Absolutely as well. And I've saved myself a bunch of time. Also, to Webbs's point, some of the common cartridge, I could send that if I were to design an experience in my Google Doc. Can I send this to other individuals in my grade level? very simply and very easily. The other thing, I had a question. I had a teacher question me about, okay, well, how would you get it to the kids? Oh, elementary, my dear Watson. One of the underutilized functionalities of Clever is the teacher page in Clever. If you were to load this link into your teacher page in Clever, so we're talking locally here in Clark County School District, the teachers have access to Clever. I have my little teacher page. I have seen our kindergarten friends be able to log into Clever on their devices, understand that path being very simple. Here's Miss So and so's page. I click on the thing and it opens that Google Doc up to me for whether I'm going to make a copy of it or whatever I'm supposed to do. The other thing, and this is one of the benefits of having like a webs on, to kind of thought partner with all the time. The other thing that would be very good to role model, and you can stop me if this is not entirely accurate, webs, is to be able to take those documents and have young people create a contacts list as a teacher of your course, email that to your young people, and have an expectation that you go and check your email. But on that bell work is checking your email to get things accomplished. We do not role model some of the basic productivity tasks and productivity strategies that young person is going to be expected to have when they enter the professional world. And that's whether you're doing blue collar work or white collar work. Being able to go into your email, to respond to emails. Some of the classrooms I've been in which we don't teach kids how to go construct an email in a professional way that sends, hey, this is my Miss Weber. I didn't understand the assignment. You got misspelled words. Everything's underline, the lowercase letters. There's no heading. Like, we don't do that. The other thing is the calendar, Google Calendar. We would send calendar invites on a daily basis. Say, here's your Google Doc. It's on your calendar. This is for our class period. It's going to be from 9 o'clock to 10:30. Here's your Google. I go to my calendar. I click the link, and it opens my document, and we're good to go. Webs, anything to add to those kind of ideas?
No, I would totally agree with that. Like, I really like the Google Calendar one, especially because, yeah, I would say I live out of my calendar. Like, it is my go to thing. And it's a very common pattern to have someone send you a meeting invite and have to access the documents that are in the meeting invite in order to prepare for whatever your meeting is. So, like, that is a pattern that they will see in the future. I also think it's funny because, like, they taught us how to write letters, and it's like somewhere in between not writing letters as much and starting to do email. Like, we just stopped doing that altogether. Like, that was never, like, people stopped teaching kids how to write letters, but never picked up on how to write emails, which is basically the same. But yeah, I think those are both really good approaches, especially like for the older kids. And I would say too, the format wise, from a learning sciences perspective, scaling it based on the age of your learners, right? So, like, I would say for the 7 section version, that you could start probably at like 5th grade, maybe, and they could follow that reasonably, maybe even as low as 4th grade. Or if you have some really advanced 3rd graders. But like for the younger kids, I would stick to like the 3, maybe the 5, because that way, because it would be, from a learning sciences perspective, chunking it into multiple like 3-step versions for the younger kids is going to go over and be a lot more effective, as compared to doing it in a 5 or a 7, 7 like tab thing. But yeah, the calendar invite and the email, I think, are both brilliant ideas in order to get them into that habit and give them that practice.
Yeah, I think that again, if we're talking about, there's lots of talk about this. How do we make learning environments in schools, very how we make that continuum toward professional life more evident for young people. Well, this is one of the, you're not. It's not too far off the beaten path to say, if I would argue a 3rd grader, if you can log into your Chromebook with your Google, the first thing we do in the morning is Mr. Lang sent you an email with our schedule for the day. It's that schedule also has links to our Google Calendar. You can go and have them negotiate. Okay, today we have, instead of what special do we have today, dude? I'm not answering that question. It's on your calendar. What special do we have today? We got library, cool, because it's A day or B day or whatever it is. But that's all on our calendar. It's all out. Giving them that I guess the pride of being able to say I can. There's certain questions I can now solve for myself without asking the adult. I'm also a human who has the faculties and abilities to go and say, there are problems that I can solve with my fingertips. And email to me is not super complicated to be able to like demonstrate to somebody. And the calendar thing, it wows me that we don't use calendar with young people as a like, you know, what is your schedule? Your schedule should be on your calendar, which is also on your phone, which is on your tablet, which is I can see what my schedule is for the month, the week, or whatever anytime I need to. There are still schools who are paying for paper planners, and not to say that there aren't any utilities for paper, but the amount of money you are spending to print those glossy planner things, which end up getting lost, like what 75% of the time, torn, thrown at people or whatever, and in your professional setting, do you use a planner that is sent by your employer?
No. People
Okay.
can't schedule things on a paper planner. Like it has to be a shared space where people can access it in order to schedule meetings, and you can't do that with a paper
So
planner.
how do we roll
Also,
monitor?
it's interesting because like we have calendar time. So why isn't there a natural extension of you're learning the calendar all together on the carpet? Now let's go back to our devices and look at what our calendars look like. Yeah.
I mean,
But I mean, just slight preach moment, and then I'll let it go because we will have to wrap up soon. I have to go eat dinner. But uh, there was and still is a very strong contingent of teachers who are not technology people,
mm,
which I find ironic because we're not technology people, but I'm gonna guess that you like still do your banking online, you still shop on Amazon, you still so somehow you manage all that technology, but then for some reason you go into the classroom and it's this vacuum where technology doesn't exist.
I think sometimes pointing things out to people like that, I think zonks people out of that mode where they're like, oh, actually, that. I mean, because you can apply that to not technology. Again, I always bring up the teacher that I taught with, who had been taught at the Cordon Bleu, and you're like, do you teach the kids anything about food? No. Why don't you teach kids about food, like food that you can write about food, you can record people doing stuff, you can do math with food, science, gastronomy is super interesting. Like all that stuff is really cool. Nope. Okay. Well, I mean, sometimes you just have that conversation, and also having the philosophy that teachers are learners too, and that yo, the teacher school did not prepare us for this modern situation, and folks don't have a lot of time to upskill, man. Like you have to have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this, time on your hands to sit there and say, okay, cool, I want to do this thing or this other thing. Which again, to me, how do you lean into the tools that you are already familiar with in order to do the things that you know you need to do in your classroom? Google Docs, hyperlinking from I built one page in Canvas and hyperlink that bad boy to Google Docs, and now my problems is solved. Period. I don't have to do anything else. And you can use our little fancy pants templates, or you just make a funky Google Doc that has the stuff on there. You click the link and you turn it in. Bada bing, we're good.
I think that's actually probably a breakthrough idea for a lot of people because sometimes we have this idea. I was just talking to my roommate about this because this is going to be a slight tangent. But so there is currently a viral recipe going around TikTok. It is the Trader Joe's dumpling bake.
Viral, but not like it's not going to make you sick, but viral in terms of
Oh, yes, yes, viral, like popular.
okay.
Like lots of
When
people
you
are
talk about
making
food,
this,
when you talk
right?
about food, you have to kind of,
Yeah. And so one of the ingredients of this bake is their, I forget what it's called, something yaki. Basically it's teriyaki sauce is all it is.
Okay.
It's their version of teriyaki sauce.
Okay.
And we were talking about how for some people teriyaki sauce is an ingredient. Like it just is its own thing, right? And you can't make that at home. It's its own. And maybe I will also say maybe this is people of a certain lack of melanin persuasion that might have that idea.
Correct.
But uh we are both people who like to cook, so we said we don't need to get that. We have teriyaki sauce at home, or we can just make it. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's the same thing when it comes to things like Canvas. Like you often think of Canvas as like its own thing, its own world, its own environment. And so the idea of taking a link to the assignment and posting that elsewhere in order to lead back to it, sometimes that's not a thing that would be apparent because you think of it as like it is its own ingredient. So I can't possibly like just link to it. And maybe people didn't know that. Like I can see it, like, hey, if I share this link outside of here, then anybody can get to it. And not realizing that it is protected by identity and access management. Where if you were to send it just to some rando, they wouldn't have access to it because they're not a member of your class. So you can share it out there and it'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great point. Also, like reflecting, being very reflective, and I think that's one of the benefits of my third year of teaching was you don't know what you're doing half the time. You need to listen to people who know a little bit more than you do. You need to be very reflective on this was the experience that I had. How what are things that went very well here? What are things that I didn't do very well here? And how can I get better at the things that I didn't do very well? And looking at Canvas, being very reflective and saying, again, the benefits of Canvas are, and the things that drive me crazy about Canvas are. So how can I avoid the things that drive me crazy? By, but at the same time, keep the things that are, make my life easier with Canvas. And I think the other thing that the other pressures are, you've got a lot of people. I want to be with the Canvas ninja and this, and like,
Yeah.
bro, that's too much. Like,
We're
don't
giving
get
you permission to be mediocre. Like you don't need to be a Canvas ninja or whatever. Like that's fine. I think that's another thing that my program did really well is they really impressed upon us the importance of reflection, and like they had us record our lessons on video and then watch them back and stuff like that. Um so I agree with you, like that reflection piece is really important. And to your point, like it's okay to not use all the bells and whistles. Like and to recognize that you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like you can reflect on what are the parts and pieces that benefit you and what are the parts and pieces that don't, and figure out how to like just use the things that are helpful and kind of let the rest go.
Yeah. And so that is tonight's episode of how to use Canvas and get away with it. We will probably, once these templates are a little bit more spiffy, we'll add some instructions and stuff to them. They'll be available in our store as well as the planning document. So if you're someone who is a Google Docs, you're very comfortable with Google Docs, there is the ability for you to utilize Google Docs in order to do your Canvas work, especially with I would say middle school and elementary school teachers. This is probably a strategy that's going to pay off for you in that those, especially elementary, haven't had to teach elementary school students with Canvas. One of the things that I tried to help the teachers at my school with was um, because this is attached to your SIS system. What happens is elementary school students end up with like 10, 12 classes because every one of the subjects is a class. Well, I don't want a fourth grader managing 10 or 12 classes if I
It's a lot.
simply was able to build the assignments in the class for the young person and link back out. They never have to go through the class at all. They're just turning in their assignments in the speaking, listening course, the math course, the science course, etc. And those grades are still being passed back, so they're getting credit in the grade book for those things. So in terms of just simplifying your life, And I'm going to say this as the last thing before we end here. If you're an elementary school teacher, the complication of the current setup for Canvas for you is the following. What elementary school teachers who tend to use Canvas are doing is they're picking one of those 12 classes and like serving their class out of that one thing. So it'd be the math class or the English class or whatever. What happens as a result? You don't have grades. The grade, you're not utilizing the grade pass back for any of those other courses. So now you have to manually add those grades in there, which is a nightmare. So this strategy solves that particular problem. If you go in and you say, this is going to be a speaking listening grade, I'm simply going to build the assignment in speaking listening and then link back to my Google Doc. Kid clicks, goes in, it's a speaking and listening grade, it's turned in, we're good to go. Where a kid never has to experience the maelstrom that is the 12 different classes. But grade time with in an elementary Canvas class is always very interesting. And that's even worse if you're not using Canvas, because now you manually have to do all your grades, which also sucks very much. Webs, you look like you would say something.
It would also allow you to mix and match. So if you create that Google Doc that has the summary, the activity, the conclusion, you can have one language arts grade and one or assignment and one for math and one for speaking and listening, all embedded in the same place, but that link out to the individual sections where you actually need the grades to go back to. That would make your life much easier. I also wanted to just plug, depending on where you're watching this, if you're on Facebook and you want to get some of our free templates or even purchase some of our templates, you can go to theintelligenthoodlums.com and click the shopping cart, or you can go to blog.theintelligenthoodlums.com and click shop, and that will get you to the same place. Because we have a few free things and then some purchasable things, and we'll be coming out with new stuff over the next couple weeks and months. So yeah, go there. Or you can check out the rest of our blog stuff, because we also just did an episode called the Jurassic Park Problem, where we show you how to evaluate some of your favorite lessons and figure out how to bring them into the modern age with the new tools. We did a great throwback to what was life like in 2005 and why might you need to update that lesson from 2005. We also had an episode last Wednesday where we just had a little chat and did some walkthrough stuff. So you can find more of our content on our YouTube channel. You can search YouTube The Intelligent Hoodlums. It's just really us and Tragedy Gaddafi who come up, so you'll easily be able to find us. Or you can check out, like I said, our blog.theintelligenthoodlums.com.
All right, and we'll see you next Wednesday with another strategy. In addition, next Thursday, we'll probably start throwing the links up on the interwebs. Notebook LM. If you're a teacher who has access to Google, let's say most school districts are also giving you access to Google's LLM, large language model, which is Google Gemini. There's a very nifty tool called Notebook LM that can take the place of your learning management system in lots of ways, and also be connected the same way we connected Google Docs to your Canvas. The same thing can happen with Notebook LM, but it's a lot niftier because it can evolve with the information that you're adding to it. So kids can get, I don't really, I can go on a rant. The blog post is coming. I hate the term personalized learning. I just think it's like a scam. But I like customized learning. And what Notebook LM does give young people is the opportunity to customize their learning, their experience with the same information that everyone else has. So it's not a situation in which you're hiding things from young people. That being the case,
Nice.
for the Homie Webs, I'm Mike Lang. We'll see you next week. And keep on keeping on. Look for us on the internets. And if you have any questions, Mike at the Intelligent Hoodlums and Webs at the intelligenthoodlums.com or info at the intelligenthoodlums.com, and we'll be able to get back with you. We'll catch you when we catch you.
Bye.